Welcome to Zagreb. I'm glad to be in the Croatian capital to start our new season of programs on EU enlargement. Things have moved rapidly since our last visit. Next year in July, Croatia will officially become the 28th member of the European Union. Our correspondent Alix Le Bourdon will bring you a new series of reports. She'll find out how the country is getting ready to join the European family. We'll also talk to Croatia's newly elected Prime Minister. We'll meet the living legend of Croatian music, Teresa Kesavija. She was once Tito's favorite singer. And Renata Poljak, a young multimedia artist, will show you Zagreb like you've never seen it before. But first, a referendum was held in January. 66% of Croatian voters endorsed EU membership. But what do Croatians expect from the EU? How do they view Brussels? Here is what they told us.
For a few years now, the European Union flag's flown over Zagreb Central Square. But in July 2013, Croatians will officially make it their own. More than two-thirds of them voted to join the EU in a January referendum. So we made the flag take a popularity test. When I show you this flag, what's the first thing you think of?
Unity and cooperation?
Europe, we're returning home.
Inequality.
We should have joined the European Union a long time ago. We were sad for too long when we were part of ex-Yugoslavia.
Super.
Poverty. Everyone can see the whole of Europe is suffering.
It's going to be better because we'll have more money.
It makes me think of transparency and the fight against corruption.
We headed to Dubrovnik on the Dalmatian coast, a part of Croatia known to be more sceptical about the benefits of European Union membership. Here the EU flag comes in for harsher treatment.
It represents a global hegemony.
3 or 4 states in Europe benefit from it, but the rest are like little mice.
Too many stars on the flag.
It won't bring us anything. 20 years ago our parents fought for our country and there's no point in joining that union today.
In the Dubrovnik district, only 55% of electors voted yes to EU membership. Here residents fear a Croatian economy centred exclusively on tourism, unprotected from market forces, within a crisis-ridden European Union.
So this was what Croatians think about the European Union. Let's now cross over to Brussels to find out how the EU is getting ready to welcome a new member. This is a report from our correspondent in Brussels, Katalin Landaburu.
On July the 1st, 2013, the EU will welcome a new member state, and with it, a new official language. And interpreters will not be the only ones that will need to adapt. Thousands of pages of EU directives and information have to be translated into Croatian.
The most important part is translated in the acceding country, where the entire acquis, which is all the laws that have been adopted up to accession date, are translated. Talking figures, the translation of the acquis represents, it varies a little bit, but roughly 200,000 pages.
It's an enormous job for the translation department of the European Commission. But behind closed doors, preparations for this next enlargement are well underway.
Ideally, we should start like 18 to 24 months before the accession. That's what we have learned from previous enlargement. So last summer we started more seriously.
Marina, Ivana and Igor arrived in Brussels last September. These Croatian translators are gradually getting to know how the European machine works. But they're bemused by the clichés they hear about their country.
Not so very informed about Croatia. It's a small country.
Yeah, okay.
And sometimes it happens to me, I say, where are you from? I'm from Croatia. Greece? No, Croatia.
Apart from their work at the European Commission, these young translators will also have to help get rid of these stereotypes about their country. The aim? To prove that today Croatia also belongs to this European class.
And for more on the story, I'm now joined by the new Prime Minister of Croatia, Zoran Milanovic. Zoran Milanovic, thank you for having us. Your party, the Social Democratic Party of Croatia, won the election in December. Now, at a time where the EU is going through an existential crisis, why is it so important for your country to join the club?
If it were 10 years ago, it would have been a sea change. Now all we are praying for is a calm sea and a calm high seas. We shall see. It's our natural environment. We think both Croatia and the EU will benefit from our membership. Of course, it will not create a sea change for Europe itself, for herself, because we are small, I should not dare to say minuscule country. We think we can contribute, but we have to specialize. The crisis is existential, but then again, every day, human being goes through the existential crisis. We learn.
Croatians voted in a referendum in January. They said yes to the EU, 66%, but turnout was very low at 44%. Why this lack of interest?
The answer to the question of a low turnout probably lies in the very long process. The process of negotiations took more than 6 years. The overall process of the adhesion to the European Union took practically 2 decades. So the people were, well, there was a sort of fatigue among the people.
According to the IMF, Croatia could plunge back into recession this year. I guess that money from the EU will be very welcome. You're entitled to up to 3.5 billion euros of structural funds between 2013 and 2015. Where do you want to spend them?
Regional development, rural development, and first and foremost infrastructure, railroads, connecting our biggest and the best positioned port of Rijeka to the Central Europe. It will take altogether billions of euro. In Croatia, it's a big money, it speaks volumes for us. But you mentioned the word entitled. So as long as Croatia is relying solely on the international and other entitlements, it will not bode well for us. The growth forecast for the current year, 2012, is actually negative for my country. So we have to reverse that. Easier said than done. For the first time in our recent history, we did fiscal restructuring and we did cuts on the expenditure side of the budget. So we're going to be spending less.
Fighting corruption remains a top priority for your government. Former Prime Minister Ivo Sanader is currently being tried for bribery. This is, of course, a major development in your fight against corruption. But do you have the means to clean the country?
To clean the August barn in the legend of Heracles of Greek myth? I hope we do. I hope we do stand a chance. But you know, how does it go, that old Churchill's dictum, in victory magnanimity? It's been a long time since I've dropped the former Prime Minister from my vocabulary and my agenda. We've been very critical. I've been personally very critical of him and of the deeds of our competitor, the second biggest Croatian party. But since the election campaign, I completely, lost them out of my radar. So I don't make comments on that anymore. But the fight against corruption, that's another, logical misfit. Because once you are at the point of fighting corruption, it means that the corruption already became pervasive. We will not allow that to happen. That's it. That's all what I can say.
Zoran Milanovic, I remind our viewers that you're, of course, the new Prime Minister of Croatia. Thank you very much for talking to us. Fighting corruption remains a top priority for the Croatian government. But there's another field where the rules of the game are often ignored: football. A recent series of match-fixing scandals has cast a dark shadow on the game. This is an investigation from our correspondent, Alix Le Bourdon.
Match night at Zagreb's Maksimir Stadium. In the North Stand, the Bad Blue Boys. Mario may not be part of the hardcore, but he never misses a match. Tonight, though, his head's not in the game.
In the stadium, if there weren't for the Bad Blue Boys on the North Stand, the stadium would be basically empty. That can tell you that people have really lost confidence and faith in gathering, in enjoying football matches.
A loss of confidence that Mario says is the club management's fault. Fed up with repeated corruption scandals, Mario launched a supporters association. Their first bone of contention with the club, the stadium's new seats.
I just sat on an overpriced chair, which was bought by the firm of one of the employees of the stadium.
Zdravko Mamic is Dinamo Zagreb's president, seen here at a club training session. Mamic refused to meet us, instead sending his right-hand man to answer our questions.
Maybe you heard there is a company connected with the club, but this is another guy who is working in the club, and he has a normal private company besides the job, who has authorization to buy and sell the things.
Mario and his friends are convinced that the company in question has been overcharging the club. To prove it, the angry supporters themselves ordered a seat from the firm for a much lower price. The Maximir Stadium is under public ownership. The club's fans, sick of seeing the ground so run down, in spite of the public money invested.
For that money, in any country, in a Western European country, they would have built 4 stadiums, not one. Mr. Mamic and the people who run Dinamo are also helped by local authorities, by the mayor, Mr. Bandic. They helped him also to avoid the laws, and they financed Dinamo with a lot of money from us, from Zagreb's taxpayers.
According to the Croatian press, the city of Zagreb is thought to have invested 100 million euros in the stadium over the last 15 years.
I don't wish to respond to what the press have written. Firstly, this isn't true, and the interview would be misleading if I denied something that comes from the press.
Croatian football's also been blighted by match-fixing scandals. This ex-player took us to his former club, FC Zagreb. He's brought along a selection of newspaper clippings from a time when the press hailed him as one of Croatia's brightest footballing talents.
That's where I once scored a last-minute goal.
He had a promising future ahead of him. Then 2 years ago, he accepted a bribe on the agreement that he'd stop giving his best during games. At the time, he hadn't been paid his salary for a year.
You go to the club, you beg them to pay you. You tell them that the state is pressuring you to pay your taxes, but the club keeps delaying and you never get paid.
The International Federation of Professional Footballers last month published a damning report about players' working conditions in Eastern Europe. Non-payment, bullying and harassment, violence, all prevalent in the Croatian game.
We are among the rare examples in the world where players have a tax status that means they have to pay welfare contributions themselves. The other problem is that the federation gave licenses to clubs who had already debts towards players.
Only a few years ago, supporters cheered Mario onto the field. All he has left today is a bitter memory of Croatian football.
Football was everything for me. Today, I have nothing. Croatian football is at rock bottom. It's hit a low that no other profession has ever reached.
The Croatian Football Federation, 2 of whose directors face corruption charges, turned down our repeated requests for an interview.
This is the Lisinski Concert Hall on the outskirts of Zagreb, and I want to introduce you to the star of Croatian music, Madame Teresa Kesavija. Hello, Teresa. It's a pleasure to have you in our show. This stage is very important for you because this is where you celebrated the 50th anniversary of your career.
I sang several times in this concert hall. Isn't it beautiful? And the audiences here are always very warm, especially when they love an artist. And I'm proud to say that they love me very much. They've loved me for many years. You're right, it's right here in this concert hall that I celebrated my 50 years on stage. It's quite something, eh?
In the 70s, one of your biggest fans was Tito, the leader of Yugoslavia.
Tito was a very, very strong character. He did love me. After his death, they found a lot of my records at his home. And I'm proud to keep a picture of him holding my hand. On it, he's looking at me, he's sitting, I'm standing and singing next to him. He really was a very, very strong character. He was charming. Yes, he was a charming man.
Teresa, during the war in the early 90s, you lost your home in Dubrovnik. It was burned, it was destroyed by the Yugoslav army. You lost everything then?
It was very sad, really very sad. It nearly killed me when that happened. And 20 years later, it was still impossible for me to travel to Serbia and Montenegro. It was unthinkable to visit the countries of those who ruined me, who ruined all my memories. But the government of Montenegro kept on insisting. They wanted me to perform in their country. So finally, I said, okay, but the first city I visited was Belgrade. When I got on stage, 3,500 people suddenly stood up. The standing ovation lasted. It's still very emotional for me. It lasted for minutes. They were standing, applauding me. I was in tears. And they were also in tears. I'm very glad I went there. I'm very, very proud I did it. I received the same welcome when I decided to perform in Montenegro. Even though it was Montenegrin troops who entered my home, it was they who destroyed it.
And before we leave, I want to ask you to sing us your favourite song. You're from Dalmatia, from the coast. Okay. It will be a Dalmatian song.
Jeżne strune mandoline, io sfasciuene carose giardine, moja radost vistabile, jeżne strune mandoline, jeżne strune mandoline.
Mandolin song. Thank you very much, Teresa Kesavia. It was a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for watching the first part of Europe District. We'll return after a news break in about 10 minutes, so please stay with us.